Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. Sorry our executive session ran a little long. We'll now begin the work session. And the first item, we have a guest with us for Preservation Awards. We have Aaron Petterance and actually John Lawson. We have both. If you guys could please step forward.
Mayor, we had our Preservation Awards presentation a couple weeks ago. Unfortunately, we were unable to arrange for representatives of one of the awardees. The award that's being being presented today is for the Mulberry Lofts renovation project. This is a good example of how preservation sometimes can be achieved, not necessarily through a preservation project, but a renovation project, in that it ultimately preserves the underlying base resource. And here to accept the award are Aaron Petterance and John Lawson.
Thank you, Steve. You don't know how many times over the years that I've come down the dual highway into town and looked over at that building from Franklin Street and thought, what a place I could be, And then you guys came along and made it happen. So we definitely appreciate it. And I've been there a couple times. You guys have done a fantastic job there. So thank you very much. John, it's good to see you. Haven't seen you for a while.
Thank you, Mayor. I gotta say, I think the city should get a lot of credit for this. We got a lot of help. People were great. Steve was great. Permits were good. Things were really nice. It was a great project. It's kept us busy because obviously we're still working on the Moeller Emporium building.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully we'll be back next year at this time.
Cool, yeah. I go by that every morning. Yeah. All right, you want to say anything, Aaron? I mean, you always have something to say.
Say something, Aaron.
Yeah, no, I think I'd reiterate that it's definitely a group project, and it's an example of a way to do something that's not necessarily, preserving something, but not necessarily through the Historic District Commission and all that kind of thing, but it is still a architectural asset and now an economic asset. Thank you.
How many businesses are there?
Just counted today, 34.
34.
Yeah, I have one empty space.
That's saying something.
They're all paying rent.
Yeah, now.
That's
Finally.
finally, yeah. John, you want to say anything else?
Already did. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, buddy. Eric, you want to come get a pic? I turn the mic off. So you I don't know if you can take our mask off for the picture. For the picture. That's no sense to you. I'll be yelled at.
We can't.
My mask.
Very quick.
We can't.
Quick.
And not this one. Once you guys together, I'll just stand behind and look at
Smiles. 1, 2, 3. I needed one more for safety. And good smile. 1, 2, 3.
Thanks, Your Honor. Appreciate it. Thanks, Steve.
Thank Okay, so next up is the preliminary agenda review. Stop me if you need to. So next week we'll call it to order at 7 o'clock. We'll have an executive session at 6, regular session at 7. I'll give the invocation, do the pledge of the flag. I'll offer again unless anybody else wants to do the invocation, let me know. We'll have our announcements. The meeting dates in September will be September 1st is a work session at 4 p.m. There's no meeting on the 8th. The 15th is a work session at 4. 22nd is a work session at 4. And then the 29th is a regular session at 7 p.m. We'll have some appointments to the City Ethics Commission, Hagerstown Housing Authority, Historic District Commission, Public Art Commission, and the Skate Park Task Force. The guest for Highlight Hagerstown Awards have been moved to September. We'll have citizen comments. We're still accepting citizen comments up until 5 p.m. on the evening of the meeting via email at councilcomments@hagerstownmd.org, or you can come in person. We only ask that if there's a group, we have one spokesperson as opposed to everybody trying to fill in here. We'll have public hearings, the annexation of Cold Road properties, and the Sailor House landmark overlay. We'll adopt the minutes of July 7th, 14th, 21st, and 28th. Under the consent agenda, we have the Department of Community Economic Development, the open container exemption for the Imagine Hagerstown on September 26th. The Department of Information Technology and Support Services, we have ESRI GIS Maintenance Agreement Renewal, ESRI of Redlands, California for $38,500. Under the Department of Parks and Engineering, we have traffic signal upgrade at Potomac and Howard, Concrete Central LLC out of Hagerstown, Maryland for $340,819.50. And we have handicap accessible ramp contract, Concrete Central LLC, Hagerstown, Maryland, NTE not to exceed $120,000. And the Wesel Boulevard reconstruction. Under the Police Department, we have 25 cameras for the downtown system expansion, HCGI of Columbia, Maryland for $33,700. 90 cameras for the downtown system expansion through Skyline Technology Solutions LLC out of Glen Burnie, Maryland for $81,492.30. And the annual annual software maintenance agreement for the HPD Police Mobile Keystone Public Safety, Inc. out of Maple Shade, New Jersey for $98,575. Under Public Works, we have the replacement of the video security system, the A&E, and University Deck parking decks, Spikers Appliances, and security out of Hagerstown, Maryland, $117,000. Under Utilities, we have under Light, Engineering Analysis Software Support, Milo Soft Utility Solutions, Abilene, Texas for $10,700. Under Light, the substation glass switch parts, S&C Electric, Annapolis, Maryland for $10,557. Under Wastewater, the grinder pump replacement, Fluid Solutions, Inc. out of Westminster, Maryland, $27,647.15. Under Wastewater, the repair of the HVA system for Office Inside Pellitzer, Sinagro, WWT, Inc. out of Baltimore, Maryland for $5,060. Under unfinished business, the approval of an ordinance authorizing the acceptance of property located at 216 South Prospect Street. We have the approval of an ordinance, a local conversion district overlay of 202 Howard Street, ZM-2020-01. Under unfinished business, we have the approval of an ordinance, deed of easement for 114 East Magnolia Avenue, the approval of an ordinance for the deed of easement from 118 East Magnolia Avenue, the approval of an annex resolution, hopefully for Valley Mall Road properties, the approval of an annex resolution for Thomas Bennett Hunter annexation. Under new business, the introduction of an ordinance, code amendments for water and wastewater, and the approval of resolution, the electric vehicle charging services agreement. We have the approval of the noise ordinance exemption for Best of Community of Hope event. The new location is now going to be Municipal Stadium as opposed to Hospital Hill for a fireworks display. The approval request for proposals for developer partner for Catalyst Project Number 3 student housing, and the approval of an amendments to the water and wastewater policy. We'll have the city administrator comments and then the mayor and council comments. Anything you guys need to discuss on next week's meeting? Okay. Good enough. Next up, general budget update.
Good afternoon, everybody. Just a couple quick things before we get into fiscal year 21, because really don't have much in the way of updates at this point. Just more continuation. The trends that we preliminarily projected are exactly what we're seeing right now. But as an overview, one of the things I wanted to take a minute to stop and do before Rodney comes to the table and talks in detail about Wesel Boulevard and specifically that project and awarding of that, just as a, I don't want to say a housekeeping, but for full disclosure, you know, that project is one that is a project that we're doing in partnership. The road reconstruction portion that the city is going to be project manager and oversee. By no means is the city paying for the whole entire $6 million. Again, both the developer and Washington County are contributing to that. It's just that when I say we, I mean Rodney, I'm taking all the credit for Rodney's group, but are the ones that are actually making that project happen. As part of our city funding that we are going to put towards that project, we agreed that we were willing to not necessarily forward fund, but utilize fund balance reserves for a portion of the money in advance, knowing and expecting that we were going to get some of that monies back in future years, and we're going to expect to see that money in the way of enterprise zone tax credit, plant permit fees, and stormwater construction management fees. So there was $800,000 that was in our fiscal year 21 budget that's earmarked for that. We actually signed the commitment and the obligation letter in fiscal year 20. So as a cleanup for fiscal year 20 for the end of the audit, I need to go ahead and make that transfer in fiscal year 20. It's just that per charter, I can't necessarily make a budget amendment without authority if it's over 25,000 that wasn't originally there. So again, more of a, I just wanted to make sure that everybody's aware that I'm going to be doing that for fiscal year 20. Speaking of fiscal year 20, we're in the middle of August. We do still know that there are several areas and several things that are outstanding that we're waiting on to complete and finish our year-end processing. But at this point, it looks like several of our funds should have a surplus, and that includes the general fund, the water fund, and the wastewater fund. I will stipulate when I say a surplus, I mean prior to getting the actuarial reports and knowing what may or may not be necessary to record for liabilities for both our police and fire pension, our state of Maryland pension, as well as our OPEB, which is just another way for post-employment benefits, specifically retiree insurance. Our other funds, the electric fund, parking fund, and property management fund, I'm definitely anticipating a deficit. Again, parking fund, we knew when we decided to have no parking, go for free parking for several months, that we were going to anticipate this, and quite frankly, the trend is pretty close to what we anticipated at that point. The good news is on the golf fund side, there's no additional general fund stipend needed, and actually there may be a little bit of surplus accumulated in the golf fund because of the stipend that we put over there. So we're going to utilize that in a manner to offset hopefully what we have to put there in fiscal year 21. So really good thing for Rodney's group is, again, he kind of laughs at me because I said there is absolutely nothing that is ever going to improve and bring back the sport of golf. Well, I think Rodney's proved me wrong, because on the golf, I think we continue to see better, way better utilization and revenue than what we've seen in many, many, many years. And then the opposite can be said for on the side of our particle pool. That covers it for fiscal year 20.
Would you want to give a couple of reasons why the general fund surplus during a pandemic may happen?
Yes, and I know that we talked about this a few meetings ago, but yes. So fiscal year 20, again, just extremely fortunate on the timing of when this pandemic hit. So because the pandemic hit in March, we already had our triennial reassessment, which SDAT, State Department of Assessment and Taxation, does every 3 years. That was completed by last December. The assessed values for all properties was locked into place by January. So all of our property values when we initially drop our bills are higher. But more than that, this tax cycle process, we receive the majority of all of our payments for real estate property, which is about 25 to 26 million. We received that all by the end of December. So for fiscal year 20, we had already completed all of the real estate billing. We had received at least 90% of our revenue, and what we had billed, we had collected. Likewise, our state income tax, which is our second largest share of revenue in the general fund, meaning it's calculated, the calculation's a little complex, but basically, as an employer, if you have somebody who works for you and you withhold state of Maryland taxes, a portion of that is designated for Washington County or a local portion. That money goes to the state. We get a calculation back on what those businesses, what that is within the city, as well as at the end of the year, when you do your personal income tax returns, you file your Maryland income tax, and on it, again, there's a portion that is for your local, and a portion of that comes back to the city. So all of that had been done and filed, so we were just receiving that money as it came. So the two biggest and largest revenue sources for the general fund really weren't impacted as stringently in fiscal year 20 because of the timing. But then we go to expenses. So from the middle of March until probably the middle of June, the general fund had practically no overtime, which is unheard of. So our overtime expenses were extremely down. Businesses were closed. Our core services, we were still providing services, but we weren't doing as many projects. So things that we were spending money on was greatly reduced. And for all of those reasons and some vacancies that we have in departments, we absolutely should have a surplus in fiscal year 20. And that's the good news for 20. What happens though in this cycle, again, by far the largest is our tax base. And so very lucky, very fortunate, our assessed values was done and completed. So our initial tax bill July for fiscal year 21, so the tax bill that dropped just a month ago, was at the highest assessed value that's probably going to be there for at least the next 2 years. So we were able to generate and send the tax bills out. We have been very fortunate in our collections efforts so far to date through August. But in saying that, I've had several conversations, lots of emails, one phone conversation, and I think it is a very, unfortunately, it's very safe to say that we should anticipate we are going to see reductions. Reductions, whether they come in fiscal year 21 and even more so in 22. Meaning as people receive their taxes, pay their taxes, they go through an appeal process, their values go down based on everything that's happened in the economy, especially on the commercial side, and that impacts the current year as well as the next year. I included a chart because I want to talk about fiscal year 21, but the chart that I included is the same one we had as of July 21st at our last work session when we did a budget review update, and that shows again about a 1.8 million across all city funds that we were anticipating a deficit. I will say Scott and I have had conversations, and I haven't updated this since. In the general fund, we're at 1.5 to 1.6 million. Unfortunately, the trends are definitely in line with that. And in addition to the 1.5, we know it's going to be increased because we are currently anticipating little to minimal to no school resource funding, officer funding, which was included in our budget. So that funding source is going to probably go away. But in addition to that.
Can I ask a question on that?
Sure.
Now, my understanding was the school resource officers were paid by the Board of Education. Is that right?
Right.
Now, when you say we're losing the funding for them, that implies that they're going to continue being employed at the schools. Is that correct?
No. So I think it's too soon to tell, and Chief Kiefer unfortunately isn't here. You know, we have a memorandum of understanding, so we employ those officers, and the Board of Ed does pay a portion of all of those officers.
I was under the impression they paid the full freight for those officers.
I don't think it's 100% of all of them, including Benny's, no. But because school is all online, the Board of Ed has, I know, reached out to say, hey, with being online, we won't need school resource officers here, so we weren't going to pay for a service that we're not going to get. So
Yeah.
we are still working out those details, because there are still some functions that we did and we provided, like in March and April. Some staffing throughout, like for the meals, filing of some reports, a variety of things. And the memorandum of understanding is written in such a way, it's a flat amount. There's no, we're paying for this many days or this many hours or this many weeks. It is a flat amount that we're to get reimbursed. And that memorandum of understanding, though, can be terminated by either party. Fiscal year 21. So I think the other thing I just want to say is that if we look at more than likely at least another 5% reduction in our real estate property revenue, that's going to be at minimum another 1.3 to 1.7 million on top of what is already reflected here. But again, it's a little too soon. We're still working with SDAT. It's only the middle of August. With the state workers still teleworking, and so many other businesses being closed, it's really hard to tell on the corporate personal property tax revenue side, because that is one where businesses self-report, and there was an extension for when that needed to be filed, and then some businesses aren't fully operational again, so some of theirs is really delayed. So we're anticipating to see additional impacts there. The good news is City Hall downstairs in the lobby, effective starting this week, we're changing our walk-in hours to be Monday, Wednesday, Fridays. Tuesdays and Thursdays will be by appointment, or if somebody comes, they're unaware, they come to the door and they have an application or something in hand that requires a face-to-face, of course we'll be here and do that, but just trying to change things up a little bit. We found that with no cutoffs in place, and even with the new tax billing cycle, the reality is we are not seeing the foot traffic. People are continuing to either mail or put their bills in the lockbox outside, or people are sending stuff electronically or via the phone. Scott?
If the moratorium gets lifted, then that'll go back to regular hours.
And that's still in September, although there is definitely a majority who thinks that that moratorium will not be lifted in September.
You done?
I am.
Any questions for Michelle? Thank you. A-2020-04, annexation of Valley Mall Road properties, discussion of tax phase and proposal.
Hello, so we are here to decide on whether to offer phase-in terms for this annexation or to approve the resolution as originally introduced with no phase-in tax terms. Again, this is A-2020-04, Marriott Spring Hill Suites, Marriott Courtyard, and the restaurant. The owner did request a phase-in approach based on financial hardships caused by the pandemic. Staff then offered a 3-year phase-in proposal, and then that approval was tabled on July 28th, so we're continuing the discussion. Staff just recommends we move forward with the annexation either with the tax phase-in or with no phase-in, and then we will finalize the resolution package as directed and then prepare for a vote next week for approval.
So just to weigh in from the perspective of the Director of Finance and on annexation in general, you know, it's taken us a very long time to get to this point, and so staff's recommendation absolutely is continue forward with annexation. Of all the options, either go ahead, because we've heard from what seems the majority of, you know, there was pre-annexation for a number of years, so why would we then do a special arrangement? Staff is positively fine implementing that option. We're also fine with a 3-year. And I know there's other suggestions in that. We're willing to hear them, but I guess basically we're really hopeful that annexation will continue. We need to continue our trend and our positive growth.
I wasn't aware until, I guess it was 2 weeks ago, in your presentation that even if we said tonight, we're gonna do annexation tonight, nothing really happens until July of 2021. So they basically have a year's grace period anyway.
And
even
then
if we said,
that bill is not technically due until April of the next year.
Right, April 22.
Yeah.
So you
They
got
would
a year
incur
and 8
interest,
months.
there would be interest incurred after September 30th, but the bill would not actually.
So I think there's sufficient time to allow for the pandemic to recover from the pandemic, and they're not going to see any kind of a hit to their bottom line until quite a while from now. So I think that gives them sufficient time to do planning and look at how they're gonna pay the property tax.
Except we don't know when the pandemic is going to be over.
Well,
There's
nobody
no
does,
timeline.
but,
Does the county give them any
Yeah.
breaks? I guess we'll wonder.
I'm not saying that they are giving them any breaks, but as a business owner myself, I know that this is a difficult time, and I'm thinking that, you know, this industry has taken the most direct hit, hospitality and tourism. And I can't imagine what that would be like, but as a business owner myself, I have to side with the business owner. We don't know what the future holds. We have no idea if this is gonna come back. And, you know, there has been a reduction, and while I am definitely in favor of annexing, right now, I do think that, you know, I side with the business owner in this. This particular business owner has, you know, this is not a multi-million-dollar corporation. This is just like Don Bowman coming to us. It's the same idea. And I think that by allowing him just a little more time and being on, you know, phase in, it's just, I'm on the side of the business owner. We just don't know when it's gonna be over.
Well, I think the decision to not impose the taxes is a decision that you do know when it's gonna be over, that you predicted it won't be over by then, and I'm not willing to do that. I think the payment you say would be first due in 2022 as far as not even having to make a payment. And had the business owner not initially came in and asked for a 10-year moratorium on taxes, when I heard, don't tax me for 10 years because of the pandemic, I think I'm just hearing, don't annex me. So I think that we all have to pay the taxes. And yeah, all the businesses do, so I agree with Austin.
I just don't think we can set a precedence, because if we do it for this one, we have to do it for all of them that come and ask, and I don't know how we afford that or do that.
Let's keep in mind that this, like, listen, I realize and I understand and I feel for the business owner that, you know, they've suffered through this pandemic like so many other business owners who've paid their taxes. And, you know, I mean, this was something that has been in play for 14 years, 16 years, since 2004. So it's not like, you know, I mean, this was inevitable. I mean, it just was, just like the other annexations that are in the pipeline right now. It's inevitable. You know, we have we've given concessions to this business person on another project that, you know, is more than what the taxes will pay through July 1 of 2022. So I believe that Lou and Emily and Austin are correct. You know, this is, you know, for years, the city of Hagerstown has suffered as development has happened all around us, and we didn't have any recourse. And then we implemented recourse, which was pre-annexation agreements. And people signed those pre-annexation agreements because they wanted water and they wanted sewer and they wanted those things from the city of Hagerstown. And now it's, you know, it's come time to pay the piper, and it's, 16 years in the making. Again, as Scott said, there'll be, late charges assessed after September of next year if they wait until April of 2022 to pay. But, and again, I'll just say that when I look at the parking lot over there at 8:30 in the morning, Monday through Friday, I don't see a change, but that's me.
I just think that by doing this and annexing them, that during the pandemic, when everything does come back to normal, they're going to be at a disadvantage because they're not going to be able to offer the same as another hotel. So that's right next, that's very close to them. So I know that they had planned for 16 years in the pre-annexation agreement, but there's a pandemic, and so they're not getting as much business as they would normally. They just aren't. And whether it's the diner not getting enough business or whether it's the hotel's not getting enough business. So now, by not doing a phase-in, we're putting them at a disadvantage near the other hotels that will not have that same additional bill now.
But that disadvantage won't come to them until next year sometime.
And
Or
again, there's
April of
no
2022.
timeline on this pandemic. We have no idea when everything is gonna come back. I mean,
You sound too much like a real estate agent convincing somebody they should buy right across the city line so they don't have to pay for the taxes in Hagerstown.
it's just it's not that, it's more business thought than.
Just so I can understand clearly, so far, we were given a sheet and there's three options here, right? And if I was just sort of keeping score, Austin, you're in favor of the middle one?
Now, Lawson's in favor of number one on top.
First one.
So you're at 206 out of the gate, right?
Annex only with no tax base.
Okay, Lou, that's where you're at as well?
That is correct.
And that's where Emily's at.
I don't know what we're debating. I think it's wrong, but, I look at what we did for Tractor Supply, look at what we've done through pilots.
Tractor Supply's a different animal, Kristen, you know that.
They were annexed after.
The city of Hagerstown is the one who screwed that annexation up in that building up. It wasn't Tractor Supply.
But that's what we applied to it. And we applied
Because it
that
was a different circumstance.
they received city services. They then were required after a period to annex, and then we provided a phase-in of taxes applicable to that period of annexation once they came in. And that's basically what happened. This is an entity that receives city services, required after a period to annex into the city, and is requesting the same treatment as those prior, or as that prior case. And for me, it has nothing to do with pandemic at all. I'm not on that train. I just think that, I look at the vehicle of where we're trying to get to and what we're trying to encourage, be sustainable. We're trying to get tax base, we're trying to grow, we're trying to make sure that our boundaries aren't limited. At the same time, we're encouraging business to grow and prosper. In this current climate, they're not doing that to the degree they would like. And at the end of the day, we still get out of it what we're seeking, while at the same time providing the best opportunity for that business to remain sustainable and grow.
So you think it should be the 3-year phase-in?
I mean, that's as far as I go. I mean, we're still accomplishing our goal.
I'm just curious, Kristen, what's the difference for the sustainability of this business if we do it in 3 years versus, when we say immediately, we're talking about a year from now. So a year from now versus 2 years from, 3 years from now. Aren't they gonna have the same situation?
Well, I mean, there's $103,000 difference, which is applied across those parties in some manner. I don't know what that is. So, you know,
And they do save, it's approximately $50,000 on water as soon as we annex, right?
Right, the reduction on the utility side will be effective, the day that the ordinance, or the resolution, excuse me, is effective, and that's 45 days from when the vote happens. If the
Next
vote happens
Tuesday,
next week, it will be.
And they will save how much? Do we know?
I think it was around 52. It was in the packet last.
Well, and that gets back down to, you know, that's 50,000 right off the top, where the tax bill doesn't go out until July 1 of next year.
no, they save it over the course of that period. They don't save that tomorrow. They save it over the
They
same
save it
course
over
of that period.
course of a year, correct. So the tax bill goes out next July. Let's keep in mind, let's pretend like there's this huge calendar. The tax bill goes out next July. That's July of 2021. If they don't pay their taxes by September, they begin to acquire late fees on the tax bill that was sent. They have until April of 2022 to pay that tax bill and associated late fees with it. So, they're almost to July 1 of 2022 by the time they actually have to send a check in at the drop dead date.
So by extending it 3 years, you give them till July 1 of 2025, correct?
Yeah, listen, I understand, and I just want to reiterate, Tractor Supply and this annexation are two totally different animals, and I wish Kathy were here because she could actually give us what exactly happened, because I don't believe that your rendition of the time that things happened is correct, but it's different. It's
I
a
think
different animal.
With Tractor Supply, it was undeveloped at the point that we entered into the agreement, but I'm not sure that we had the current annexation policy in
We
place
didn't.
either. I felt like that occurred, all of that arrangement
Same time.
occurred prior to the annexation policy.
No,
No?
no. We were in the 2+2 committee meetings during those deliberations.
I didn't hear what you said. What did you say?
We were in the 2+2 deliberations when that occurred. The big difference was there wasn't that delay in time period. It was, hey, you're coming in by X period. And then there was a negotiation of, and we'll offer this. Knowing that what's happening, you know, there wasn't any, I don't know what the word is, debate. So I guess then getting back to the mayor's comments, so what you're saying is, if you took Emily's reference to the utilities and the time frame that the mayor alludes to, staff's proposal actually gets the difference almost cost neutral.
That was, honestly, that's the goal.
Well, I'm just saying that
That's our hope.
that the middle proposal just about makes it cost neutral,
And,
to our favor of about $25,000 on the general fund side,
and that is based on.
and $50,000 the third year.
That's based on today's assessed value, knowing that assessments are getting reassessed again in just another month. in certain areas.
So
of
the middle
county.
proposal puts us at 75 grand to the good at the end of the 3-year period, which is arguably, when you look at the other two, just about equitable.
So are.
And
for
that's if
next-
they paid their tax bill on July 1.
So for next steps, for staff to bring this back next week for a regular session to be put to vote, which option should we bring back to do? One?
We have 3 people up here who say,
Okay,
number 1, 100%
okay.
the first year, next July 1. Is that not correct?
That's with
Am I
no-
missing
with no
something? Is
tax
that not correct? That's correct. Okay. Yep, we have 3 people who say next year, July 1, 21, send the tax bill for $206,132.44. Thank you.
Thank you.
Planning Commission recommendation to mayor and council, landmark overlay district at Sailor House. Megan?
So this is our review of the Planning Commission's recommendation to Mayor and Council to approve the landmark overlay on the city-owned Sailor House. And I think we're also requesting permission to sign and send a letter of support for the Washington County Historical Trust for grant funding to catalog the artifacts they found so far. So the Sailor House is a small stone house in Kiwanis Park that was built between 1790 and 1810. It was documented in the Maryland Inventory of Historic Places in 1975. And in 2015, the Washington County Historical Trust began to work with the city to stabilize and partially renovate the Sailor House. So the intent is to preserve the Sailor House as an important historic landmark district in Hagerstown. And the landmark designation is necessary in order to qualify the building for certain grant funding and also to relax certain regulations. So the Historic District Commission members were in favor of protecting the building through the landmark designation. They forwarded their recommendation to the Planning Commission. And at the Planning Commission's public hearing, we entered into the record 2 emails in support, which I provided you all with, and then also Martin Brubaker spoke on behalf of the Washington County Historical Trust, also in support. And then we received an additional letter of support from Ann Aldrich, which I also attached to the memo. So again, the Planning Commission did recommend approval, and I think the next step would be to hold a public hearing on August 25th and then vote to amend the zoning map to add the landmark overlay district. And then also for the letter of support for the Washington County Historical Trust grant, I believe.
We do have the absolute authority, once we put this historic landmark designation, this overlay district designation on it, we have the absolute authority to remove that, correct?
I believe so. And it would be another rezoning process, because this is just a rezoning process for an overlay over the existing zoning.
So, in order to conduct a removal of that overlay, if necessary at any point, let's say we wind up 15 years from now and it's sitting in the exact same condition it is today, and grant funds weren't secured, and you know, the interest and the effort in the funding doesn't materialize, I want to make sure that we don't have to go through a zoning reclassification process akin to, you know, proving, you know, that there's a valid reason to change it, to remove it.
Yeah, I think it would just have to be another rezoning process to remove it. I'm not totally sure.
Just like we're doing right now. Put it on, we can do it, take it off.
Yeah, I think so.
Just confirm that.
Yeah,
And then let them know.
I can confirm that, yeah, that the
Yeah.
process to remove.
Let's
the
confirm that for
overlay.
next week, okay?
Okay,
Or you can send it out and let us know for sure.
okay.
Any kind of language there. We're okay with it then if we can actually do that, put it on, take it off?
I'm fine with it.
I'm good.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
And then do we have your permission for, to sign and send a letter of support as well for
Yes.
the grant? Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. Eric, you're up, yep. Electric vehicle charging services agreement.
Yeah, good afternoon. In 2018, the city of Hagerstown entered into an agreement with the Electric Vehicle Institute, or EVI, to install at no cost to the city some electric charging vehicle stations. They installed 4 in the Elizabeth Hager parking lot. At the time, the project was really about advancing, reducing carbon footprint.
Introducing, right.
Right. And so it was never a revenue generator, and that was never the purpose. But what we did was we put parking meters in and charged a little bit higher rate, $1 an hour, for people to park there while they charge their vehicle. So now it's been a couple years, and there's always been an option of charging for the electric of itself. So people that charge their vehicle, if they came before 9 o'clock in the morning or on a weekend, they basically got the electric for free, and they didn't charge for parking. So it's been a free service for the most part. We're spending about $277 on average a month in electric, so it is being used. And we do collect a little bit of money off the parking meters, but it's not much. But EVI recently approached us and said, look, it's been 2 years, and I think they're trying to recover a little bit of cost to help with maintenance and such, so they'd like to charge for the electric itself. So the goal here would be to take the meters out and then have them charge for the electric. The fee would be a $2.50 flat fee plus 20 cents a minute. I think most vehicles on these fast chargers, probably 20 to 30 minutes, will get a full charge. So it costs somebody about $6.50 to $8.50 if they do a full charge on their vehicle there. The good thing about that is that if they're charging for the electric, they can charge 24/7. So it doesn't matter when somebody comes, they'd be charged for those fees. The city would share in the revenue in a 50-50 split. So if they collect $10, we get 5, and EVI would get 5. So this is a change from going from the meters to actually charging for the electric. The contract they sent has been reviewed by our attorneys. We made a number of changes. EVI has been agreeable to that. So that's what we're asking to try and change that up.
Eric, is it usual and customary for other municipalities with electric charging stations to charge for their electric?
Yes. Not all of them. I think his email said about 20 or 30% do. It just depends.
And is there, or could there be, an incentive for homeowners to put electric charging stations in their own property so they use that electric?
I'm sure they can. I'm sure there's fees to that too. I'm sure there's, of course they'll be charging off their own electric grid if they want to do that.
There's also, when someone buys an electric vehicle, there's rebates that come along with that are above and beyond what people who buy a gas vehicle get. A lot of that comes directly from, the feds actually have a rebate that they put on. So there's a lot of cost savings at the purchase point of an electric vehicle. Ford right now has some that you don't have to have a charging port like this. So we're coming out with plug in the wall.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And some of them are charging up, within 8 hours. So it's just like when you park your vehicle at night.
Usually you charge at home, you're going to be charging 8 to 10 hours to charge your vehicle because it's a slow charge. These are fast charging systems down here. That's why 20, 30 minutes and fast charging is harder on a battery. That's why you don't want to do it all the time because you're.
Do we know what they charge out at the mall?
What's that?
Do we know what the price is
I
out
don't think
at
they
the
charge at the mall.
I think they started.
Oh, did they? I don't know, sorry. I know there's charging systems at the premium outlets, and I know there's, or whatever they call themselves now, and at the mall. I don't know if they're
I'll look
charging for
tomorrow
that.
when I go by, but I'm pretty sure they.
And the ones at premium outlets.
I had heard that they started, but I haven't never looked at it myself.
I'd have to stop and look. As
have a
far as I
gas
know,
car.
these are still the only ones within the city limits. Those right here, so. But I understand EVI, I think they're a nonprofit. They get they get their money from grants and that sort of thing, and they're trying to recover a little bit of money here to help with maintenance.
I'm fine with it.
Okay, we're
I
good.
think we talked about that when we were first talking about this. that
Correct.
eventually we-
Chance of, right.
Correct. That was an option. It's always been an option. The credit card readers are already installed in the units. All they have to do is remotely turn them on. They take all the responsibility of collecting the funds, just like our parking meters pay by phone. They collect the money and then they cut us a check. They take on all the liability, all the PCI compliance. That's all on them.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next one up is, we postponed the trademark investment at 114 North Potomac Street. Next up is improvements to Wesel Boulevard. Rodney?
Good afternoon. I'll have Jim walk you through the memo just so you understand what all we're going to ask you to approve next week. Jim deserves a lot of credit. Over the last couple of months, he's worked with Frederick Seibert to get the plans together, the specs, the proposals, all to meet the schedule that was requested by North Point. So we have some good news here to report to you. So Jim, I'll let you walk him through.
So we advertised this project for bids on July 3rd, I believe. And it's a pretty short time for contractors to be able to look at plans of this complexity and put together a bid. We opened bids on August 13th, and we got 5 bids, which we were pleased to see. Usually the more bids you get, the more competitive it is. And what was really interesting, there's such a small range between the low bidder on this project and the high bid. They're all within about $400,000 on a $5.5 million project. So the low bidder was C. William Hetzer, Hagerstown firm, well-known in this area for roadway construction projects. The city has had several contracts with Hetzer. They actually are going to be or have been awarded the Pangborn Park restoration project as well. So we are comfortable with Hetzer's capabilities, and they have a good understanding of the project and the time frame in which it needs to be completed. So I think that staff would recommend approving or award of the contract to C. William Hetzer for the roadway construction portion of this. There are some other costs, though, or other pieces of the project that weren't included in the bid that we sent out. There are other work items, and they're listed here in the memo. 4 of the intersections that we'll be rebuilding have existing traffic signals, and those traffic signals have loop detectors. They're wire loops that are in the pavement as you approach those signals. Those are all going to be ripped out as we rebuild the road. And instead of putting loops back in and also to facilitate during construction, keeping those signals in operation, we would like to purchase video detection cameras that would be mounted up on the mast arm beside the signal heads to activate the signals instead of relying on those loop detectors. We have a sole source vendor for all of our traffic control systems. That's Econolight. And they've given us a quote for the cost of those cameras, plus we need to add in some additional money for cabling to connect the cameras. So their cost ended up being just under $73,000. As Rodney said, Frederick Seibert and Associates here in town prepared the plans for the project. The reason that we went with them is they were already doing the plans for the North Point development. They already had done some of the survey work for the road construction, so it just made sense to have them, given the time frame, have them complete the plans. So we had a quote from them to complete the plans and get them to us for bidding of $125,000. And so that also needs to be paid out of this allocation for the project. Geotechnical services is another one where the geotechnical engineer for the project was already working for North Point. They'd already done investigations on Wesel Boulevard. And we think that having a geotechnical consultant on board is going to be important to get us through this project, because we're expecting that there's going to be some bad soils out there and we need advice on how to handle them. So we're recommending that we retain Triad Engineering to do the geotechnical investigations. They gave us a not-to-exceed quote of $39,000. And then last, well, I shouldn't say last, the last one that's listed here is charges for the Hagerstown Light Department. As we rebuild the road, there are existing street lights that are going to have to be removed and then reset and reconnected. And some of that work is, Hagerstown Light Department's the only one that's qualified to do it. They don't want an outside contractor doing it. So they've given us an estimate of about $30,000 to complete that work. So there's a summary at the end of the memo. If you add up those 5 cost areas, road construction, video cameras, engineering design, geotechnical work, and Hagerstown Light Department, the total cost of the project is about $5.47 million. The budget, per the agreement that we have with Washington County and North Point, is $6 million. At least $6 million was pledged. So we've got about $500,000 there of, I'll call it cushion or contingency, which is a good thing to have. The one thing I will say that's not listed in these costs is as North Point got under construction, they realized that they have to do some utility relocation. There is an existing fiber optic line that Verizon has that's in the way. There's also a Columbia gas main that needs to be relocated. And it needs to be relocated partly because of what North Point's doing, but partly because of the road reconstruction that we're doing. So we've had some preliminary discussions with North Point on how to handle this. I think North Point's going to go ahead and take care of fronting the costs to get everything relocated and moved out of the way, but I think that they are going to come back to us and ask us to share in at least some of those costs. And so I think that if there is any cost sharing on those utility relocations, that's going to come out of this cushion that's left there. So $500,000 cushion right now. It may be less than that after all the work is done, but I think we still feel very comfortable that the project can be done under budget, and we're hopeful it can be done on the schedule. It just depends on the weather.
Well, it sounds like good news, and really good news for me when I'm coming out of Wesel.
That's true.
Out of Sister City Drive there, or whatever it is, where the light never changes, it seems like, when you're sitting at that light, at 9 o'clock at night, so.
So the schedule will be that as soon as you award it, they're hoping to start in September. They're going to work as long as the weather allows this fall. Anything that gets carried over will knock out next spring. We had a public meeting last night with the businesses out there. There was maybe 10 or 12 showed up. We were hoping for more than that. But we're going to do our best to try to keep in touch with them, because traffic will always be able to flow, but it'll be a construction zone for several months, so we want to keep those businesses open and informed what's going on. Yeah. And the last thing I wanted to say was something we should feel good about is by keeping City Hall open and all the staff working, when you award this contract, this will be $8.8 million over 18 contracts that we've awarded during the pandemic. Almost all of them went to local contractors, so that's a lot of jobs retained or created, and yeah, we're getting great bids, lots of interest, and I just commend my staff for getting all that done.
You're here. Yeah. Thank you. City Administrator?
Just a couple of things, Mayor. As everybody is well aware, we did have our first COVID positive staff person on the first floor. As soon as we found out about it, we put the COVID plan into effect that we began developing back in February. We did have to close the lobby down, send all the staff for testing, and thankfully all of the staff did come back negative. And I attribute a lot of that to the efforts that the staff on the first floor put into cleaning the areas, maintaining the guidelines that we had put forth in the COVID instructions that we gave to them back in March. And I'm sorry that staff had to go through what they did, and I'm sorry for that. I'm also sorry that we had to shut the lobby down, and which caused some other departments to have to take some of the calls that they're not used to taking, and they did a great job doing that. We are back a second day of being open down there. We are, as Michelle had said, decreasing the actual in-person lobby hours, and that's mainly because of the fact there's just no foot traffic coming into City Hall. A lot of that has to do with the moratorium, where people are not having to pay their bills. that are due. We appreciate those that have continued to pay, and there are some of those. As Michelle said, we are not real confident this moratorium is going to be lifted anytime soon, which is going to be a pretty significant hit to us as a utility, both water and electric. So we'll keep you updated on that as we go forward. Also, as we went through the consent agenda today, I want to make sure that as we talk about the financial situation that we are predicting the city will be in, but yet we continue to spend, or we continue to put out, $100,000 for this, $200,000 for that. All of this information on where that money is coming from. This is not just general fund money. It can be enterprise fund money. It could be in the form of grants. It could be in the form of carryover. All of that information is public knowledge and is on the city's website as part of the agenda for the meeting. So as people think, well, how can the city be in the situation it is, but yet they're still spending all this money? Please educate yourself and go out and look at that information as to where this money is coming from. And that's it for me. Thanks, Mayor.
Shelley?
Nothing this evening.
Luke?
Nothing, Mayor, thank you.
Nothing tonight.
Nothing.
Kristen?
Just one thing, I think that one of the efforts that might be beneficial for local jurisdictions as the moratorium, reaches its fifth month, would be, so most jurisdictions, since they don't have the ability to charge late fees, don't have the ability to disconnect for non-payment, I would assume have no choice in a lot of instances, or in this instance, but to proceed with their normal next step, which typically is lien. The annual process comes up and you place a lien based on that amount. Usually that number is probably, measurable and usually pretty predictable, which accounts and things like that. I don't know that the state has a clear understanding and awareness of the escalation that that's going to create upon that process. At the end of the day, I think that there is this misunderstanding that by not doing the late fees, by not doing the disconnection, that somehow those other steps that you often get to in those more extreme cases aren't going to happen either. But there's nothing that says those next steps aren't going to happen. In fact, they are your protocol. And so I just think that we need to start having some communication with other jurisdictions statewide and gain an understanding of where our counterparts rest in terms of how many more of those liens they're going to have to be processing that go through those county and state court systems, unlike prior years.
That's excellent point. And also, there is a PSC public hearing at the end of the month that municipalities were not necessarily to be included in, but we are including ourselves as far as the moratorium, what the effect of COVID has been on. It was really directed at the private utilities. We have inserted ourselves, and I think a couple other municipalities have as well, and that'll be part of that discussion.
All right, I don't have anything. We're adjourned. Thank you.